Q.1 The Government of India Act, 1935 is a watershed in India's constitutional history. Elucidate. Q.1 The Government of India Act, 1935 is a watershed in India's constitutional history. Preview. With the building pressure of Indian political organizations and parties like Congress, the British government was constantly pressurized to make new reforms in the governance. For this, many Indian Councils Act of 1892, 1909 and 1919 were enacted. But the most important act which shaped the contemporary as well as the later polity of India was the Government of India Act 1935. It can be seen as a watershed in India's constitutional history. Body. The Act derived material from four key sources: this report of the Simon Commission, discussions at the Third Round Table Conference, the White Paper of 1933 and the reports of the Joint Select Committees. Its salient features were abolition of provincial hierarchy and introduction of hierarchy at center, abolition of Indian Council and introduction of an advisory body in its place, provision for an all-India federation with British India territories and princely states. Elaborate safeguards and protective instruments for minorities, supremacy of British Parliament, increase in size of legislatures, extension of franchise, division of subjects into 3 lists and retention of communal electorate. Note: the federation did not come into being as the princely states did not agree for it. Some parts of the GOI Act 1935 came into force. For example, the Federal Bank, the Reserve Bank of India, and the Federal Court were established in 1935 and 1937 respectively. The other parts of the Act, particularly provincial autonomy, came into force on 1st April 1937. The first elections under the Act were also held in 1937. The Act had far-reaching repercussions. One of the reasons for which it was important was that some provincial autonomy was granted. This was the first time that this had been allowed and was seen as an important step forward. Ministers in the provinces could have control over all departments, except when governors choose to intervene in cases of public order or to veto the bill they disliked. This was a drawback since it meant that the real power was in the hand of the governors. TLP Phase I, GS1 Compilation 2018 Type Text Page 2. Another reason was that it granted more voting rights to the people of India, i.e. 25% of the population of India was now having the right to vote, which was 5 times larger than that in 1909. The Act also recommended the federal form of GOV for India, which enables the princes to participate in the political affairs of India. The final and the most important reason was that although it suited no one, the Act was an important point in the move toward independence. It proved the basis for the negotiations which finally resulted in the British leaving India. Parliamentary systems had been set up in which the Indian people were to gain increasing representation. The same procedures and process of Parliament was carrying forward in independent India. Note: in this question, the focus is the watershed. Most of you have written about the features of the Act, while the focus should have been on the facts as to how it was different from previous acts and how it shaped future political procedures of India. The quality of an answer is not decided by the number of facts you have mentioned in an answer, but the relevance of the facts. Connecting the dots. Similar question can be asked on the significance of the other acts. Now, when significance is asked, apart from the details and facts of the provisions of the Act, you need to mention what type of change it brought in the mindset of the British authorities and its impact on Indian politicians and citizens in general. If you are able to think like that, you will be able to answer any other related question from the topic. Best answer.